Good morning.
Okay, sir.
Shall we start the webinar, madam?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Good morning to all. Today is a special day as our department has stepped into the live stream in the present day situation in handling the teaching learning process. I, the head of the department, on behalf of the staff members, thank the management and the principal, the convener, co-convener, and the organizing team members, and the technical assistant for this live stream webinar. I also thank the morning chief guest of this morning webinar, who is present in our webinar room to give a lecture on a new theory, a current present theory. She has completed named the dystopian literature, dystopian theory. She has completed her UG and PG degree in LDC Madurai, and at present, she is working as assistant professor in the English department at the American College, Madurai. She has cleared her NET exam, and her area of interest in research is dystopian literature. And today she is present, Rain Joyce. I welcome you, ma'am, to our department in the webinar to give a new insight into for the novels which we have studied earlier. The novels of Jonathan Swift, like Gulliver's Travel, George Orwell's Animal Farm, and 1984. I welcome you, ma'am, to give a new insight to all these novels. With this small introduction, I leave the webinar room for the chief guest. I welcome you, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, you can continue, ma'am. Ma'am,
thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Okay, ma'am.
I'm truly grateful, and I humble myself in this morning as we have all gathered in this webinar room to listen to this insight on dystopian literature. So before I delve deep into what dystopian literature is or what today's session is going to be all about, I want to give a minute to you. I want to give you a minute to think about this current day situation with a question: what if? What if? So why have I asked you this question, what if? This is a question that will actually help you probe deeper into the future, because this is a question that we cannot answer or we have no answer. For example, what if this COVID-19 will have no cure? What if we cannot resume back to our normal life? What if we spend the rest of our lives at home like this? So there is no answer to a question. So why am I asking you these questions, or what is the significance of this question, what if, is what we'll be looking into in this webinar continuously. So to give you an introduction, dystopia is a literary technique that discusses the reality of the near future. So the future that we have no clue about, that we have no idea about. And this technique is an attempt to educate and give awareness to the audience. So what awareness does it create? Or what attempt, what education does it give you, or what awareness does it create? So is what will be, what that leads you into the idea of dystopia. So these stories are specifically set in the near future. So the near future is nothing but, it can be any time between tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. So this future ahead of us is always that is uncertain and that is clueless. So this future that we will be facing without having any clue what we are venturing into or what we are stepping into, okay, is what dystopia is all about. And dystopian society appeared in many subgenres even before we know that there is a genre as this. In subgenres are used to draw attention to the real world. They were drawing attention to what is being happening, but in the name of a dystopian society. So what are those subgenres that we will see or we'll observe dystopian societies? Is through science fiction. Even before we knew that there was an idea called dystopia, this dystopian reality was portrayed much in science fiction. So that is where it originated. So before we see the origin or the evolution of how this dystopian literature came into existence, we will just look into what dystopia is. This is a word that comes from Old Greek, which means bad, and topia is a word again taken from the origin place. So dystopia means a bad place. So to us, it is not nothing but a bad place. It says a world that is imperfect. Bad here means not a place that is not clean or anything as such, but it is unclean in the sense of political or probably in the idea of the environment. All these aspects are comprised or put in together in this idea of imperfect world. Okay, so imperfect world that gives a nightmarish image of what might happen to the world in the near future. Now, as they're sitting now in this, sitting at our hometown and our home comfortably and cozy, we still can think about what might happen to the world tomorrow, that is the near future. So this is exactly what dystopia describes or brings to us. So these are a few science fictions where dystopia began or the idea of dystopia evolved. So it starts with a few works like George Orwell's 1984, Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, or The Marching Morons by C.M. Conlett. Okay, these are a few works wherein these are science fictions where the idea of dystopic world is given inside. So when we read the text deeper, we get to understand that they are focusing on a surreal world or an unreal world that basically or outwardly looks like an utopian society, but it is dystopic. So the science fiction were considered a fierce pool. Now, I do not know why they termed this science fiction as fierce pool, but delving deep into this term fierce pool, I understood or I got into this gave me a further insight saying why this science fiction is called a fierce pool, because all those science fictions that came out were talking about a society that that looked very perfect, but they were not. So that created a sense of fear in people, because they did not know what they were up to after the inventions that science had brought in. What they thought was good later itself became a sense of an invention that gave them a sense of fear. So this is why science fiction was considered as a fierce pool. And dystopia is a genre that is said to be forged out of science fiction by these few people who started writing in the earlier stages. George Orwell, we have we have Animal Farm by George Orwell, we have Aldous Huxley, and we have Evgeny Zamyatin's We. The work is called We, W-E, We. All these works are initially science fictions that had a tinge of the dystopic society that we will be talking about portrayed in the work. And dystopic society was a society that was too frightening or undesirable to be true. So what was so undesirable to be true is that nothing you see, is nothing you see could be related to, anything that is near truth. So they had every idea that we normally, every basic concept that we normally go through, reconstructed, and that idea of reconstruction gives you the sense of fear. That gives you the sense of abnormality. Okay, so that is basically what dystopian societies were giving the readers. The idea of dystopia was giving the readers, and dystopian literature laid is based on the idea of fear. So just like how I told you, something that is current, the fear that is current. So for example, as I was talking, in the beginning with the questions, what if, the current fear that we have is all about COVID-19. So what are we going to do, or what we are going to do in the future? What if things are not going to change? Okay, so this fear is taken to the next level, that is being pushed hard, and the writers are able to think or imagine whatever was or whatever bad can happen, or whatever they can imagine to be the worst of that particular fear that is already gripping or crippling them from the inside. So this fear that they have in the inside is what is being projected in an amplified manner in the dystopian literature. So this genre is being closely related to the science fiction. So this literary genre from science is taken slowly out and projected as another area of interest or area of literature by authors like Margaret Atwood. We have A Handmaid's Tale, where she talks about a society that suppresses women, and where there's a society that is nothing. If you have read the novel, you would understand that it is not anywhere between. The society that is projected is not anywhere between, or lies not anywhere between what we call as normal. So this idea of dystopic fiction was carried forward into the world of young adults. So it is so because all these science inventions, all these the idea of these inventions and the science developing everything, every walk of our life, science intruding in every walk of our life was much related to the world of the younger generation. So this is why they wanted to carry this idea of dystopia into the world of young adult fiction, thereby pushing this idea of dystopic fiction, this dystopia, into the world of young adult fiction. So I've been talking about the what ifs. So these curious what ifs that we ask ourselves when we come across something that gives you a sense of fear. Okay, that sense of fear is actually amplified in the level of fictional complexity in this dystopian fiction. So now we are talking about COVID-19. This situation, somebody can write in the future, probably, who has experienced this lockdown or who has experienced this situation now, can push this idea further into a level of complexity and can imagine and can provide insights on what if this situation hadn't changed. So this, the writer's creativity gave them much space to push this idea into a fictional complexity. So what are those that they kept in mind while they were talking about this level of complexity? They were mostly the real world issues that every one of us are going through, that every one of us are a part of. For example, we have environmental issues, environmental collapse. We have politics. We have economical strategy declining, economical empowerment declining. We have religion. There is always a contradiction between the development of religion and the development of science. They both don't go together. They don't complement each other. religion and science, they always, are in a war with each other all the time. So religion, they have science and technology, and they also have this ethics that we follow. So these are the common real world issues that these dystopian writers have taken into or have for consideration when they start writing a dystopic fiction. So these are images that represent environment, religion, politics, and technology. So now giving a thought about where did this idea of dystopia evolve, or where did this start? We have Thomas More, who wrote this work called Utopia in the year 1516. So what he defined, or how he defined utopia, was a perfect society. What to him a perfect society meant was a society that is finished, complete, and unchangeable. So when we call a place or anything perfect, we don't want to change anything, or we don't consider updating or upgrading any of the aspects of that particular object or an idea. So here he called, an utopian society to be a society that is finished, complete, and unchangeable. So where do we see such kind of perfect places, or perfect location, or perfect place? We see that in the setting as in the biblical Garden of Eden. I think that is the first ever utopian society that any of us will be aware of. And there are Greek and Roman stories where they project earthly paradise. They talk about everything that is perfect around them, and the idea of golden race or age. So where everything that they wanted was around, and they were enjoying leading a perfect life. So this slowly is, the idea of writing stories with utopian settings were created as an escapade to the hardships people of their time were facing. I have highlighted the words hardship and their time. So I will let you know why I have highlighted the word hardships and their time. So as I have given you in the next point, Thomas More's Utopia in 1516, okay, they considered that as a blueprint for an ideal society with a minimal crime, violence, and poverty. That was probably all those that basically people were facing. Or the crime rate was high, people were very violent, and people had so much of power. The situation of poverty where was consuming a lot of energy from all of them. So they were working very hard to change the situation of poverty, to rise up their standards, and this was totally not possible for them. They were dreaming for a world without crime, a world without violence, and a world sans poverty. So this utopian setting that was written to as an escapade to hardships of people from their time, okay, takes us back to a little bit of history. I wanted to make it a bit of a story, so that is why I highlighted the word history. So that takes us back to World War II. And people, we know that anything that we have been talking about negatively or negative sense started from the exploits that were made, or the exploits that started with World War I. And people, before they could get back from the fear that was crippling them about all these exploits of war that World War I had already given them, there was World War II again. So that World War II actually intensified the fear in them, and this amplification of the intensity of fear actually gave them the idea of a world that was dystopian, or the anti-utopian literature evolves at this juncture. And as I have given, it says this was the juncture that dystopian literature, or the anti-utopian literature, pointed out the errors of the utopian ideas when applied to a real human society. So what they thought was perfect, or the perfect world that they were portraying, was not the same when not perfect when it had to go further, when it had taken the lapse of time. So the idea of the sense of belonging in YA fiction, it's a quote by critic called Kenon. He says, dystopian fiction can provide valuable opportunities for young readers to reflect on the complex process of their engagement with the regulatory power relations to their communities. So mostly we are this younger generation who have kept ourselves away from the idea of politics. We are not bothered about our environment. We are not bothered about the economics, or we are not mindful of anything that we have to be. So here he talks about this quote from Kenon. He says, the complex process of their engagement with the regulatory power relations of their communities. So what keeps us bound together? We are bound together by the idea of politics, the thoughts that we express on politics, religion, commonly, environment, all these. So this sense of belonging is pretty much absent in the YA fiction. So that is what he's trying to highlight or through this quote. And giving you a few points on what are the features of this dystopian fiction, you can imagine a situation to be worse, but this dystopian fiction actually gives you another phase or another level of the dystopic world where you can see the dystopian work starting to describe you from a world that is worse to a horrifyingly unimaginable society. You can in your wildest dreams never imagine a society as this, or a society that will the dystopian society focuses on a code of ideals. So what are those ideals? Those ideals that we hold that makes us stand so firm. For example, the ideas of community, identity, and stability. These are few ideals that we hold or have so close to our hearts. So these ideals are corrupted by human shortcomings again. So for an example, I would give you an example of Veronica Roth's Divergent, where the idea of community, identity, and stability is being distorted. So this, when distorted, what happens to the bond that human beings share is again a question mark. So this is what Roth projects in her work, Divergent. They call that society to be the community to be, they call the human community to be divided into 5 factions based on their nature: the abnegation, who are selfless; the candor, who are honest; the amity, who are peaceful; the erudite, who are intelligent; and the dauntless, who are the brave people. So these 5 factions actually divides the people into 5 different categories based on their nature. And this is again where we have to see, or we have to look into a deeper thought, where this is a modern world where we are striving to establish an individual identity, but this dystopic world projects or transfers the idea of you're striving for this individual identity into your thought about individual identity is being portrayed as a crime. So the same work of Roth, Divergent, actually portrays another set of people who don't fit into any of these 5 categories as factionless. When they don't fit into any of these 5 categories, they are pushed aside, they are kept aside as factionless, and this is how they live. They have no food, they have to depend on anybody, they live as dependents because they are not able to create an identity that could go well with all these 5 categories or the 5 factions in which the entire society is being divided. And these dystopic works are pretty much postmodern. And when we talk about the idea of postmodernism, there is a critic more who calls these texts postmodern because he identifies these texts to have female heroines and how they resisted the non-traditional ways. So we have, for an example, again, I would like to give you examples from Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games trilogy, where you have Katniss Everdeen, who is the heroine of the who's the heroine of the entire trilogy, and you have Veronica Roth's Divergent trilogy, where you have Beatrice, who names or who changes her identity as Tris when she moves from her faction of abnegation to the category of dauntless. So there is again Kennan who gives another thought where he exposes this idea of postmodernism in the dystopian fiction. He says, analyzing novels with female protagonists, he analyzed that the sense of community that is formed when an adult or parent is no longer present, the leadership roles of the female is exposed. So both these novels placing or featuring female protagonists as their female as their protagonists, he gives much deeper thought in exposing the submissive quality of leadership, which is being projected or exposed in a magnified or an amplified manner again. So here these novels project these female heroines to be not at par, but a level ahead of all those male characters who are present in these novels. So these dystopian fiction also follows a particular structure where they talk about a few things that we normally face, and they have restructured it, or they have visualized these ideas that we are normally thinking about. So everybody, as we live now, we are in a community. We call that community, starting from the minimal of what we call as a family. Family, we have an extended community. We call them relatives. So there is the community getting extended. So this community or the idea of family is restructured. So, for example, there is this city called the capital, which is named as Panem in the Hunger Games, which exercises political control, or the country which has the complete control over the entire state, dividing them into 12 districts and giving each of them one single work. So this community division again is given in the hands of, or is recreated. And the setting is mostly British society, which is pretty much after they face a disaster after this 21st century. And it is not only that female protagonists are given importance, but there are male protagonists, for example, from the story, from the novels The Scavenger's Tale and Off the Road, where the two characters from these novels are considered male outcasts in the society because they try to go beyond the control that the government and the political society has been exercising on them, and they try to uncover the deep secrets of what control that people have been exercising on them. So whatever looks outwardly dystopian, or these dystopic world that these novels project, though we are dealing with so many external factors, like we talk about war, we talk about population, overpopulation, we talk about disasters, rebellion, we talk about oppression and all of this. All these external factors, whatever we talk about, the ultimate result brings you to just one point, that is self-discovery. So in all these novels that you read, be it Veronica Roth's Divergent trilogy or Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games, wherever you read, you ultimately come and reach this juncture where this hero or the heroine of the novel, the protagonist of the novel, male or the female protagonist, the hero or the heroine of the novel, they come to a juncture where they overpower, or they set themselves ahead of all these things that curb their freedom into a path of self-discovery. And as I've told you, the family is reconstructed. So where we generally talk about family as family defined as people whom we are related to by blood or by the bond of marriage. But here they define it as people who form a bond of support and trust. So here, for example, again, I would like to bring an example from the Divergent series, where the factions in which they are divided, which I've already explained. The 5 factions: abnegation, candor, amity, erudite, and the dauntless. They call that they are taken away from the family that they belong to. That is, people who are related to them by blood, where they originally belong, and they are fixed into a place where they have no connection with anybody, except for that they have all chosen to be in one particular faction. So this is an image of Tris, the female protagonist Tris, who sits with her family before the choosing ceremony with her parents. Now she belongs to the abnegation. And the next image is an image where you can see that she is sitting amidst this crowd, where she'll be choosing or moving from her family, that is abnegation, to the category of dauntless, where she thinks she actually belongs. So why is this dystopian fiction, is currently trending, or why is this an apt work that you can read as a young adult? There are a few features like questioning, confusions, where we struggle in making decisions both in personal matters and parallel, making ultimate choices of both parallel and personal matters. These are a part of adolescent experience. So, which is why this dystopian fictions, they perfectly fit as an young adult fiction. So if you are interested in reading or getting a good start with reading dystopian novels, you can have a glance of these novels: Divergent, Insurgent, Religion. This is a series that I have been talking about by Veronica Roth. You have Lois Lowry's The Giver, the 1984 by George Orwell, and a few others. Thank you so much. You have been a wonderful audience.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, convener, ma'am.
Sir? Sir? Audience, any questions? Please chat in the chat box.
Ma'am?
Sir? Okay, sir.
You can give a vote of thanks, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Shall I deliver, sir?
You can deliver,
okay,
ma'am. Just
Okay,
the slide will be running. You just deliver.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Out of thanks. This is Hannah Evangeline. Thank you, Rini. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver a vote of thanks on behalf of the esteemed institution. We want to express our gratitude to our guest speaker, Rini Joyce, with her energetic and informative thoughts on dystopian literature. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rini, sparing your time with us. I extend our sincere thanks to our management and principal sir and our HOD Dr. B. Gurudev Rajan for delivering welcome address and for constantly motivating us. And a warm thanks goes to Dr. Maria J. Arlene Monica ma'am and Mrs. Nirmala ma'am for their commitment to work and its executions. Behind every success, there should be an hard work. I would like to acknowledge the immense contribution of our dedicated faculty members. Once again, I thank you all so much. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Participants, please fill in the feedback link in the chat box.